What if the most powerful advice about money was the exact opposite of what you were taught in school? That's the life-changing lesson from a boy who had two fathers, one rich and one poor, and their conflicting advice will transform your understanding of wealth. Subscribe and turn on notifications now so you don't miss the secrets that could change your financial future. I want you to imagine something. Imagine you are a young boy or a young girl, and you are growing up watching the adults in your life. One person you love tells you, you must study hard, get good grades, find a good safe job, and save your money. But then another person you love tells you something very different. They say, you must learn how money really works. Then you can make money work for you and you can build a life of freedom. These are two completely opposite ideas. Which one would you choose to follow? This was the real-life situation for a man named Robert Kiyosaki, the author of this book. When he was a young boy, he had two father figures in his life. These two men had very, very different beliefs about money and success. He called them his poor dad and his rich dad. His poor dad was his real biological father. He was a very intelligent man, highly educated, with a good job working for the government. He was a teacher, and he truly believed that success comes from working hard in school, getting good grades, and climbing the career ladder to get a higher salary. But even with all his intelligence and his hard work, Robert's poor dad struggled. He seemed to live from one paycheck to the next. He was often worried about paying the bills, and he believed that talking about money was not polite. It was something private and a little bit scary. His rich dad, on the other hand, was the father of his best friend. This man was not highly educated in the traditional way. He did not have a fancy university degree or a safe government job, but he had something that was even more valuable. He had a real education about money. Rich Dad owned his own businesses, he made smart investments, and he believed that financial education, learning how money works, was much more important than formal education. He would often say, "You don't need to work for money. You need to learn how to make money work for you." Now just imagine being young Robert standing between these two men. He loved them both. He respected them both. But they were giving him advice that could not be more different. His poor dad would say, "Get a good job so you have security." But his rich dad would say, "Don't look for a job. Learn to create jobs for other people." His poor dad taught him that the love of money is the root of all evil. But his rich dad said, "No, the lack of money is the root of all evil." At first, Robert was very confused. How could they both be right? But as he grew, he started to notice something important. His poor dad, despite being so smart, was always stressed about money. He was always worried. But his rich dad, who did not have the same level of formal education, was always relaxed. He was confident about his future. One day, Robert finally asked his rich dad, "Why are you so confident about money? Why are you not worried like my dad is?" And rich dad looked at him and replied with a kind smile, "Because I understand the game. I understand how money works. Most people don't. They spend their whole lives working hard for money, but they never ever learn how to make money work for them." That one sentence changed everything for Robert. It was like a little seed was planted in his mind. It was a seed of curiosity. He decided right then that he wanted to learn from his rich dad. He wanted to understand his secrets and if he could follow in his footsteps. Let's just pause here for a moment and think about this. Isn't this the reality for so many of us? We grow up and we are told, "Go to school, get a good job, save for your retirement." But how many of us were ever really taught how to handle our money? How to make it grow? How to escape that feeling of working just to pay the bills. The way you think about money. Your mindset is what shapes your financial future. If you see money as something scary or bad, you will probably always struggle with it. But if you can see money as a tool, something that you can learn to control and grow, you will open a door to freedom and opportunity. If you had two paths in front of you, and one path leads to a life of financial struggle, and the other leads to financial freedom, wouldn't you want to know how to choose the right one? That is exactly what we are going to uncover together in this story. Rich Dad continued to teach Robert, and every conversation they had opened Robert's eyes a little wider. One afternoon, Rich Dad said something that Robert would never ever forget. He said, "The rich don't work for money." Robert was puzzled. He looked at Rich Dad and thought, what does he mean? Isn't money the reason we all work? Rich Dad explained with a patient smile. No, Robert. The poor and the middle class work for money. They trade their time for a paycheck. But the rich make money work for them. That is the biggest difference. Rich Dad went on to explain how most people live their lives inside a cycle, a trap. He called this trap the rat race. He said, when you are young, you go to school. There you are taught to study hard so you can get a good job. Once you get that job, you work hard to earn money. And with that money, you start to buy things like a nice house or a new car. But those things come with more bills. You have a mortgage to pay, loans, taxes, and repairs. So what do? You have to work even harder to pay for everything. He paused, letting the idea sink in. It never ends. People think they are working for financial security, but who are they really working for? They are working for their boss, for the government to pay taxes, and for the bank to pay back their loans. The harder they work, the deeper they get into this cycle. This is the rat race, and this is why they can never escape. Let's imagine a man named John. John earns $3,000 every month. He works hard. One day his boss gives him a raise, and he starts earning $4,000 a month. He feels so happy and excited. So what does he do? He goes out and buys a bigger house, or a better car, or the newest phone. His expenses grow with his income. Instead of using that extra money to save or invest, he keeps spending more. Now John has to work even harder just to cover all these new expenses. This cycle keeps him trapped, running faster and faster, but never really getting anywhere. Robert listened, and he nodded slowly. He realized with a sad feeling that this was exactly what his own poor dad was doing. Rich Dad then asked Robert, "Do you know what financial freedom really means?" Robert shook his head. He wasn't sure. Rich Dad explained, "Financial freedom is simple. It means you have enough income from your investments, from your assets, to cover all of your monthly expenses. When you reach that point, you don't have to work anymore unless you want to. Your money is doing the work for you." He continued, "People think being rich is about having a high-paying job. But even someone who earns a lot of money can be poor if their expenses are too high. True wealth comes from owning things that generate income for you, not from earning a big salary." Then Rich Dad gave Robert a simple but life-changing lesson. It was the difference between assets and liabilities. He said, "You must understand this. An asset is something that puts money into your pocket even when you are not working. A liability is something that takes money out of your pocket." He gave two simple examples. Let's look at case number 1. Buying a car. A young man saves up $10,000 and buys a beautiful new car. He feels proud. But that car needs fuel. It needs insurance and it needs maintenance. And every year, the value of the car goes down. This car is a liability because it is constantly taking money out of his pocket. Now let's look at case number 2, investing in property. Another man saves the same $10,000, but instead of a car, he buys a very small piece of land in a growing area. He rents it out to a local farmer for $200 a month. Over time, the value of the land slowly increases, and it continues to generate income for him every single month. This piece of land is an asset because it is putting money into his pocket. Robert was amazed. It was so simple, yet so powerful. He realized how often people, including his own family, confused liabilities with assets. A big house, a fancy car, or even expensive clothes might make you feel wealthy, but they do not generate income. They cost money. Rich Dad told Robert, "The rich buy assets first. That is their secret. They use their money to invest in things that will make more money for them. Things like businesses, real estate stocks, or even education to learn new skills. These investments generate what we call passive income. Once they have enough assets generating enough income, then they can easily afford the luxuries, the nice cars and big houses without worrying about the cost." Rich Dad gave Robert another example to make it even clearer. "Think of 2 families," he said. "Both families earn $5,000 a month. Family A spends all of their money. They pay for rent, food, and entertainment. At the end of the month, there is nothing left. They are back to zero. Family B, on the other hand, lives a little more simply. They spend only $4,000 a month, and they invest the extra $1,000 into stocks. Over time, their investments begin to grow. Soon they start earning $500 a month from dividends, which is their share of the company's profits. Eventually, this passive income grows large enough to cover all their living expenses. Family B has become financially free, while Family A is still stuck working hard in the rat race." Robert was really beginning to understand. It was not about how much money you earned. It was about how you managed your money. Rich Dad then shared another powerful idea. He told Robert, "Most people, when they want something they cannot buy, say the words, 'I can't afford it.' The rich, however, ask a question. They ask, 'How can I afford it?' This small change in words makes a huge difference in your life." He explained, "When you say, 'I can't afford it,' your brain stops working. It's the end of the thought. But when you ask, 'How can I afford it?' your brain wakes up. It starts looking for solutions, for ideas, for possibilities." Rich Dad gave Robert a small task. He said, "From now on, whenever you want something but you think you can't afford it, I want you to stop. Take a piece of paper and write down 3 possible ways you could make it happen. Maybe you can cut some unnecessary expenses. Maybe you can work on a small side project. Or maybe you can learn a new skill that pays more. This exercise will train your mind to think like the rich." Robert was still a little nervous about the idea of investing. He asked Rich Dad, "But what if I lose my money? Isn't it risky?" Rich Dad smiled. "That," he said, "is one of the biggest differences between the rich and the poor. The poor are so afraid of losing money that they never take any risks. And because they take no risks, they never win. The rich understand that failure is a part of learning. It's how we get smarter. If you make a mistake, you don't give up. You learn from it, and you try again. But this time, you are wiser." Rich Dad shared a simple plan with Robert for how to start building wealth even with very little money. First, track your expenses. For 1 month, write down everything you spend money on. This helps you see where your money is really going. Second, start small. You don't need a lot of money. Begin with small investments like buying a few shares of a stock or putting money in a savings account that earns interest. Third, learn every single day. Read books about money. Attend seminars. Find mentors who can teach you. 4. Focus on building assets first. Before you buy luxuries, focus on buying things that will make you money, like a rental property or starting a small side business. And 5, reinvest your profits. When your investments make money, don't spend it. Put that money back into your investments to help them grow even faster. As Robert started to follow Rich Dad's advice, he felt a change happening inside him. He no longer saw money as something to be spent immediately. Instead, he started to see it as a seed, a tool that he could use to create more money. He began to look for opportunities to invest everywhere he went. Slowly but surely, his mindset was shifting from one of scarcity, of never having enough, to one of abundance. Rich Dad's lessons were beginning to change Robert's life one small step at a time. Robert's journey with his rich dad took another important turn one day. Rich Dad said to him, "Robert, to become truly wealthy, you must first learn how to control your emotions." This was a surprise to Robert. He looked at his mentor and asked, "What do emotions have to do with money?" Rich Dad smiled his usual wise smile. "Everything," he replied. "Most people let two powerful emotions control their financial decisions, fear and greed. And these two emotions are what keep them poor." He explained, "Fear is the emotion that drives people to stay at jobs they don't even like. They have a deep fear of not having enough money to pay their bills. So they settle for a safe paycheck instead of taking a risk to build something for themselves. This fear is like a cage. It traps them in the rat race." He continued, "Imagine someone who dreams of starting their own business. They have a great idea, but they don't do it. Why? They are afraid of failing. They are afraid of losing their savings. They are afraid of what other people will say. So instead of trying, they stay in a safe job that pays just enough to survive, but never enough to truly thrive." Rich Dad then added, "The rich feel fear too. Everyone does. But they don't let it stop them. They understand that feeling fear is normal, but taking action is what matters. If you want to succeed, you must feel the fear, and then you must move forward anyway." Next, he explained the other emotion, greed. "Greed is the other trap," he said. "Greed makes people believe that having more money will make them happy. They think, if I just buy that new car, I will feel successful. Or, if I buy that big house, everyone will respect me. But buying these things only creates more expenses and more stress. They are chasing a feeling that doesn't last." He continued, "True happiness does not come from owning things. It comes from freedom. The freedom to do the work you love. The freedom to spend your time with the people you care about. And that freedom comes from building assets, not from spending money on things you don't really need." Rich Dad told Robert, "If you want to control your emotions, you need to arm yourself with knowledge. The main reason people are afraid of money is because they don't understand it. They don't know how to invest, so they avoid it completely. They don't understand how taxes work, so they end up paying more than they need to. They don't know how to build wealth, so they stay poor." He encouraged Robert to start learning about 3 key areas. First, investments, understanding different ways to grow your money, like stocks and real estate. Second, taxes, learning the legal ways the rich use to pay less in taxes by using smart strategies. And third, the market, learning about how the economy works so you know when to buy and when to sell. Rich Dad emphasized, "The more you know, the less you will fear. Knowledge gives you power over your emotions." One of Rich Dad's most powerful lessons was about changing your perspective. He told Robert, "You must stop thinking like a consumer and start thinking like an investor." For example, imagine you receive an extra $1,000. A consumer's first thought is, "What can I buy with this?" They might spend it on new clothes, a new gadget, or a vacation. An investor, however, asks a different question. They ask, how can I use this $1,000 to make more money? They might buy a few shares of a stock, invest in a small online business, or use the money for a course to learn a valuable new skill. Over time, the investor's money grows, while the consumer's money is simply gone. Rich Dad also taught Robert how to see opportunities that other people miss. He said, most people don't recognize great opportunities because they are too busy working for their money or worrying about their bills. The rich are always looking for chances to grow their wealth. He gave Robert an exercise. When you walk down the street, he said, don't just look at the shops. Ask yourself questions. How could I own one of these businesses? What does this business need to succeed? Train your mind to think like an owner, not just a customer. Robert started to practice this simple exercise. As he did, he found that the world looked different. It was full of opportunities he had never seen before. He saw a small cafe that was for sale. He saw an old house that could be renovated and rented out. He even had an idea for a website that could grow into a real business. As Robert began to learn and apply these new lessons, he started to face doubts from the people around him. Some people told him, "You're too young to be thinking about investing," or "That sounds too risky." Even his own poor dad, who loved him very much, warned him to focus on getting a safe job instead of chasing these big dreams. Rich Dad gave him some advice. He said, Robert, people will always criticize what they do not understand. But you have to remember, they are speaking from their own fears, not from your reality. If you listen to their fears, you will end up just like them, stuck in the rat race. He encouraged Robert to stay focused on his goals and to find other people who believed in growth and success. Rich Dad also told Robert, you don't have to start big. In fact, starting small is the best way to build your confidence. He shared an example of a young woman he knew who wanted to start investing, but only had $50. Instead of feeling defeated and waiting to save a large amount, she began buying tiny shares of small companies. Over time, her small investments grew, and more importantly, she gained the confidence she needed to take bigger risks. Rich Dad explained, success is built step by step. Each small win gives you the courage to aim a little higher the next time. He also emphasized the powerful role of daily habits in achieving wealth. He told Robert, your habits will determine your future. If you make a habit of saving and investing a little bit of money every month, it will grow into a fortune over time. But if you have a habit of spending everything you earn, you will always stay stuck. He recommended one simple, powerful habit: pay yourself first. Before you pay any bills or any expenses, set aside a portion of your income just for your savings and investments. Finally, Rich Dad warned Robert about one very common mistake: impatience. He said, most people give up on their dreams because they don't see results quickly enough. They expect to become rich overnight. But building real wealth takes time. It takes discipline, and it takes consistency. Think about it. When you plant a seed, you don't see a big tree the next day. You have to water it, protect it, and wait patiently. But over time, it grows into a strong tree that can provide fruit for many, many years. Building wealth is exactly the same. As he finished their talk that day, he looked at Robert and said, remember, money is just a tool. It is not the final goal. The real goal is freedom. The freedom to live your life on your own terms, to follow your passions, and to help the people you love. Once you achieve that kind of freedom, you will truly understand what it means to be rich. Robert left that day feeling more inspired than ever before. He was determined to break free from the rat race, build his own assets, and create the life he had always dreamed of. One day, after many years of lessons, Rich Dad told Robert, now you are ready for the most important truth about becoming wealthy. Success is not about getting lucky, and it's not about being born with a special talent. It is about your mindset, your hard work, and your willingness to take action. Robert leaned in closer, eager to hear more. Rich Dad explained, "Many people dream of becoming rich. They talk about it, they wish for it, but very few of them actually take action. They are always waiting. They wait for the perfect time, the perfect opportunity, or the perfect idea. But the truth, Robert, is that there is no perfect time. The best time to start is right now." He gave Robert an example. Imagine two friends. One says, "I will start saving and investing when I get a raise and make more money." The other friend doesn't wait. She starts small, saving just $10 every week. 10 years later, the second friend has used her small, consistent actions to build a small fortune. And the first friend, he is still waiting for the right time to begin. Rich Dad continued, "Opportunities are all around us, but only those who are ready to act on them will see the results. Don't wait until you feel 100% ready. You never will. Just start with what you have from where you are." Rich Dad also taught Robert that failure is not the opposite of success. It is a part of the journey. "Every single successful person has failed," he said. "Many, many times." He shared a story about a businessman he knew who had started 5 different companies. All 5 of them failed. People in his town laughed at him. They called him a fool. But he did not give up. On his 6th attempt, he built a company that became wildly successful and completely changed his life. Rich Dad smiled and asked Robert, "Do you think he would have ever succeeded if he had stopped after his first, second, or even 5th failure?" He also emphasized the importance of self-discipline in achieving financial freedom. "It is easy to spend money," he said. "It feels good in the moment. But it takes real discipline to save and invest that money instead. That is why the habit of paying yourself first is so critical. Even if you have many bills or debts, you must always set aside a portion of your income for your future self before you spend on anything else." Rich Dad explained that this habit does 2 things. It builds your assets, and it also builds the mental muscle of discipline that you need to grow your wealth over the long term. Rich Dad noticed that many people let their own doubts stop them from ever pursuing their dreams. He told Robert, "Your thoughts create your reality. If you focus on your fears and your doubts, you will always find reasons to fail. But if you focus on your dreams and your goals, you will find ways to succeed." As their time of lessons was coming to an end, Rich Dad shared one final, surprising piece of advice. He said, "The richest people in the world are those who give back." Robert was confused. "How does giving make you richer?" he asked. Rich Dad explained, "When you help other people, you create value in the world. It doesn't always have to be money. You can share your knowledge, you can mentor someone who is just starting out, or you can donate your time to a cause you believe in. When you give, it multiplies your own success. It brings you a sense of fulfillment that money alone can never buy, and it strengthens your network and your relationships, which often leads to even greater opportunities in the future." So, he told Robert a story about a wealthy man who started a scholarship fund to help students from poor families go to college. Not only did this act of generosity change hundreds of young lives, but it also brought the man immense joy and public recognition, which opened doors to new business partnerships he never would have found otherwise. Rich Dad's very last piece of advice to Robert was simple, but incredibly powerful. He said, "The moment you stop learning, you stop growing. Stay curious for your entire life." Years later, Robert looked back on his journey. He realized how those simple, powerful lessons from his rich dad had completely transformed his life. He had built wealth, yes, but not just wealth in money. He had built a life of freedom, a life of confidence, and a life where he had the ability to help others. Robert's final message to the world, and my message to you today, is this. No matter where you are in your life right now, you have the power to change your future. It does not matter if you are starting with nothing. What matters is your mindset and your willingness to take that first step. True wealth is not just about having a lot of money in the bank. It is about creating a life where you can follow your passions, help others, and live without regret. As you finish listening to this story, please remember that your own journey to financial freedom begins today. It begins with a single thought, a single decision. Start small. Stay consistent, and learn from your failures. Dream big, and never, ever give up. Because the only real limit to your success is the limit you place on yourself. The world is full of opportunities, and they are waiting for you to take that first step. Your time is now. Make it count.